This House is in session. Prior to suspension on Friday last, we were in Standing Finance Committee. We returned to Standing Finance Committee.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 32, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, in the amount of $65,608,446.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I seek your permission to allow my team to join me on the well of the House for deliberation on this head.
So granted, Minister. Good morning to everyone. Before we get started, let me indicate and advise for those who are here for the first time of this process, and also to remind honorable members of how the proceedings go. Honorable Minister, you will be given 10 minutes to give an overview, your opening remarks on this ministry. You are also allowed 5 minutes in response to any questions or queries that may be raised by honorable members. The members of your team, before they begin to speak, we're asking that you give your name and the role or your title of your job. Honorable members are reminded that questions to ministers should not exceed 3 minutes, and you're allowed 3 supplementary questions at any one intervention. But of course, you are free to, having given away at that point in time, you are free to come again. Honorable Member, Honorable Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I should begin by introducing to you the members of the team who are with me. I have to my left Permanent Secretary Ms. Simone Rudder, and to my right, Acting Permanent Secretary Joyanne Skinner. You will ask, no doubt, sir, why one is permanent secretary and why the other is acting. P.S. Brother has been good enough to come off of vacation leave so as to be with us here today. Behind me, sir, would be Dr. Louis Woodruff, who is Director General of the Productive Sector, Ms. Kay Seeley, Director of Trade, Ms. Risa Lane, Chief of Protocol, Mr. Agard Evans, our Chief Economist in the Trade Division, Mrs. Tricia King, Senior Foreign Service Officer for Europe, Asia, and the Americas, Mrs. Sandra Gittins, Senior Foreign Service Officer for CARICOM and Caribbean, Mr. Tyrone Brathwaite, Human Rights and Multilateral Relations, Senior Foreign Service Officer, Mr. Ricardo Kelman, Hemispheric Relations Senior Foreign Service Officer, and Mr. Carlos Wharton, who is the National Coordinator of UNCTAD 15. I think I may have omitted the Deputy Permanent Secretary, and I apologize for that. Jane Brathwaite. And I said the Chief of Protocol? Yes. Now, Mr. Chairman, let me begin by saying that it is really a pleasure to be able to bring this team before this House. It really is the first time that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has had an opportunity to present in this format. And quite frankly, to the best of my recollection, it will be the first time that the Head 32 with respect to the business of foreign affairs and foreign trade has been cross-examined in any significant way before this House in the estimates process over the course of the last decade and a half. The opportunity to discuss our mandate, sir, is very important, and I welcome that. Let me start by saying that there's nothing esoteric about that which we do. It is reflective of Barbados's national interests and Barbados's priorities, and effectively what we perform is a twofold task. With respect to the international community, we are trying to promote peace, we are trying to promote security and opportunities for development, remembering at all times that ours is a diplomacy, not of power, but a diplomacy of development. The effort on the second prong of our agenda is that we align those objectives of peace, security, and development with Barbados's economic, social, and political interests. And those goals are advanced, sir, via 4 theaters of endeavor. The first is the effort to strengthen our traditional bilateral relationships and at the same time to forge new and non-traditional relationships. And we have done this by extending the diplomatic footprint of the country so that we now have 14 embassies across the world and 3 consulates general. And within the estimates which are now before us, we have set aside funds to begin work in yet another embassy. The second theater of endeavor, sir, is the effort to reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism and to build alliances with like-minded states. And what do I mean by that specifically, sir? I mean working with organizations like the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, CARICOM, sir, so that we can find partners with whom we share common interests, especially as it helps us to advance not only Barbados's specific small island concerns, but where those concerns also reflect and align with the common heritage of mankind. The third theater, sir, is very important. It's about increasing the levels of trade and commercial diplomacy with which this country is engaged. And we do this, sir, via building a network of trade agreements across the world and by trying to evolve from non-reciprocal and preferential-based arrangements. And I'd be happy to have the opportunity to elaborate on some of this further because we have enjoyed arrangements with the United States of America and with Canada, who are major trading partners, but we must now forge more mature and more fit for purpose trade agreements as opposed to arrangements in which the country stands and the region stands on their own 2 feet with respect to finding markets and with respect to making sure that those things which are of greatest significance to us economically are able to be traded in CARICOM, between CARICOM and the United States of America and Canada. I would just add on that score, Mr. Chairman, that these estimates reflect a commitment of 3.2 of $5 million dedicated to the Division of Foreign Trade, and that is with respect to the prosecution of a more robust trade agenda. And we can already point to some significant advantages or benefits being derived from the efforts we've made with respect to Barbados's international trade already. If you look at the figures between 2020 and 2021, our exports were $447 million. In last year, sir, they had risen to $502 million. And obviously, we would want to see that continue to escalate. The fourth area of endeavor, sir, is equally important. And that, simply put, is the effort to ramp up our outreach to the Barbados diaspora and to use or leverage the skills of the Barbadian diaspora, the financial weight of the Barbadian diaspora, the goodwill, and the influence and contacts that they have in all of the different quarters and capitals of the world where they reside, and to bring them to bear on Barbados's economic development as best we can. Mr. Chairman, I spent some time talking about the need to strengthen traditional bilateral relationships, and I could condescend to specifics if you allow me to. When I speak of traditional relationships, I'm speaking about the relationships we have, for example, with the Caribbean, CARICOM. I'm speaking about the relationships which we all know we enjoy with North America and Canada, Europe. But beyond that, sir, there's a need to forge new and non-traditional relationships. And it is for that reason that we have created new missions and non-resident accreditations, and have non-resident accreditations across the world now. We envisage and as I said, we've already committed resources to it in these estimates, that during the course of this financial year, we will expand our diplomatic footprint into Ireland. And that is very important because of the heritage relationship which this country has. 1620 and onwards, there has been a heritage relationship with Ireland, and that has transformed itself into an investment relationship with Ireland. We are already in Ghana, we are already in Kenya, United Arab Emirates, and the advantages of this, sir, is not just to have new embassies created so that the Minister of Foreign Affairs can fly about. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we are building people-to-people contact. And this is very important. We are laying the platforms for economic diversification and economic transformation. And I give you specific examples. The relationship which we now have with the United Arab Emirates has extended our reach for the first time in history into the Gulf states at a time when we ourselves are trying to build out a platform economically for gas exploration, natural gas exploration offshore Barbados, and yes, even oil if it is to be located. And the reality is, sir, that is a strategic alliance with a set of countries whose bread and butter is, in fact, that type of endeavor. Again, we have built out relationships through Kenya to Rwanda, and I should say that last month our High Commissioner to Kenya was accredited to Rwanda, so that Barbados's diplomatic footprint now extends into Central Africa as well. And this has allowed us to do some work with respect to the preparation of the diversification of our economy into the development of pharmaceuticals manufacturing in this country. Kenya, of course, Mr. Chairman, sir, is significant because it is the United Nations permanent mission to Nairobi's location. And through that mission, tremendous work is done with regard to matters of significant existential importance to Barbados. I need not stress, Mr. Speaker, sir, the importance of the work that we're doing on the climate crisis, and the United Nations Environmental Program is headquartered in Kenya. The Bridgetown Initiative, which the world is now buying into, and I have the privilege of saying to this honorable chamber, sir, that in a couple of days, the Prime Minister and myself will go to France to meet with President Macron, who has urged that he be allowed to form part of a cooperative agreement with Barbados so that there can be a summit, allowing him to use his global reach as a G7 leader to help us to advance the Bridgetown Initiative. By no stretch of the imagination, sir, could we have envisaged that this type of relationship would have been fostered for this country 10 years ago. The UN Habitat headquarters is also in Kenya, sir. Socially and environmentally sustainable housing is the mission of the UN Habitat. And of course, socially and environmentally sustainable housing is the mission of the Minister of Housing in this administration. And so therefore, there are those synergies which the foreign affairs effort helps us to build out and to continue to advance. And we utilize, sir, in this process, a country team for external coordination approach. This government in March of 2021 would have had its cabinet approve the country team for external coordination as a platform, sir, for strategic collaboration and to offer policy support to the diplomatic efforts that I've just been talking about. And we support that, sir, via the introduction now for the first time in a serious way into our foreign policy endeavor by having commercial and cultural officers located within the missions that we are establishing. We already have one such officer in Accra, in Ghana. We also, sir, are utilizing diasporic relations officers in those capitals where there are a significant amount of the diaspora. So that, for example, we already have one in London, and it is our intention very shortly to have another in Toronto. And this, in turn, sir, facilitates the commercial diplomacy network and creates an opportunity for the country to have the benefit of an integrated platform for the export of its goods and services, while at the same time having inward flow of investment for Barbados, and in turn laying the foundation for further growth, further economic transformation, and further development. I would have, sir, it would be remiss of me not to speak a little bit about CARICOM, because that is an area where we have to continue to prioritize increased and strengthened engagement. This honorable chamber would wish to note that when I had the privilege of serving in this ministry as a novitiate minister in 2003-04, we, sir, were at a stage where 52% of our exports went to the CARICOM region. Today, 60% of Barbados' exports go to CARICOM. So you see, sir, that CARICOM is growing in importance for us. And the relationship which we have with CARICOM is quite unique because it is the only region in the world with whom Barbados enjoys a trade surplus. And in this regard, we are trying to deepen our relationships with CARICOM, and I would want to highlight in that aspect, sir, the relationship which we have built with the Irfan Ali administration in the People's Cooperative Republic of Guyana. President Ali has invited Barbados and Barbadians to invest and to take advantage of economic opportunities in Guyana, and we aim to facilitate and encourage that type of investment, and we have already built tremendous bridges and made significant strides in the agricultural sector in particular. It will all be done under the continued framework of the Barbados-Guyana Joint Economic and Technical Cooperation Agreement, which was signed in 2002, I believe. And it will speak to a plurality of sectors, including tourism, including agriculture, including hospitality, including air services, fisheries, maritime affairs, sir. The list is perhaps too long to go into at this point, but I would welcome any opportunities to elaborate further. Mr. Chairman, I would want to say one quick word about trade and its significance. The World Trade Organization had its 12th ministerial conference in June of last year. This House, sir, should take note of the fact that our immediate past minister, Senator Dr. the Most Honourable Jerome Walcott, in his capacity as the conference vice chair, coordinated and concluded significant discussions on a thematic session which is entitled Trade-Related Aspects of International Property Rights in Public Health. Now, Mr. Chairman, I draw this to your attention because out of those discussions has come a World Trade Organization ministerial directive on this agreement. And it now provides a platform for states to work together to diversify vaccine production capacity. And therefore, sir, over the course of the next 5 years, Barbados and states like Barbados will be able to override the exclusive effect of patents through a targeted waiver that addresses the specific problem of facilitating and streamlining vaccine production and vaccine exports. To put it very simply, sir, because of the untiring and very dedicated efforts of the officers of the Division of Foreign Trade, some of whom are sitting behind me, and because of the sterling quality of leadership brought to the Division of Foreign Trade by Minister Walcott, and at that time assisting him was also Minister Husbands, who is now next to me but was not here when I started. Mr. Chairman, this country has been in a position where we have been able to lay the platform for vaccine production and obviously vaccine export in a manner and in a way that was completely unthinkable prior to this. I am indebted, and I would want to urge, sir, that this House also demonstrate its indebtedness to the leadership brought to bear on this matter by those persons who were in the center of the endeavor. Mr. Chairman, I do not know that it is necessary for me to delay the House further. I would want at this stage to thank you for your indulgence and to offer you the opportunity to allow colleagues to ask any questions that they might consider necessary.
Minister, move the head.
Beg to move, sir, that head 32 stand part.
Thank you. Honourable member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Senior Minister, for coming in with your team to be able to answer some questions. First, let me congratulate you on taking up the mantle left by the most honorable predecessor, your former Minister of Foreign Affairs. And obviously you've been doing, and before you him, and you've continued the good work that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade have done for the people of Barbados. And I salute you for doing that tremendous job. I want to focus first, my first question would be that on Guyana. And I had the wonderful privilege visiting Guyana at the request of the President on 2 occasions. The first one was to open their first photovoltaic farm. And at that meeting, I was able to explain to them the tremendous work that we're doing in Barbados with photovoltaics and renewable energy. And they're very keen to be able to expand the renewable energy sector, particularly in far-flung districts that don't have access or easy access to the grid in their country. As you know, Guyana is very vast, and they have many areas that don't have access to the grid appropriately. And then the other one was obviously with respect to housing and developing our housing ties and seeing what they were doing in housing and see how we could borrow from their experience here. So I want you to expand, because obviously the work that we're doing in Guyana is important and tremendous work. And I was hoping if you could expand what are the further plans that the ministry would have to be able to further strengthen the strong relations that we already have with Guyana. And I want to be clear, I have family in Guyana, and whenever I go down, I visit them. And there are many, many Barbadians, in fact, who have relatives in Guyana. So those close ties go back not weeks, months, or years, but decades. And clearly there's that close tie that we need to expand on and improve. So if you could give us an update as to your future plans for Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister, and I welcome the opportunity. Let me first of all indicate a desire to have the Senior Foreign Service Officer with responsibility for this matter, Sandra Gittins, join us in the well, because I don't think that there are enough seats, so she would need to come in. And at the same time, sir, I would also want to indicate that Minister Husbands, who, as I said, has joined me, should also have an opportunity to speak to this matter as well, as she has been carrying the mantle of trade relations with Guyana for some time. It is perhaps, sir, an indispensable point of departure that during the Prime Minister's official visit to Guyana in February of 2022, there were concrete plans laid which have already started to be unfolded with respect to supporting in-depth bilateral cooperation between Barbados and Guyana, as well as a trilateral cooperation between Barbados, Guyana, and Suriname. In fact, sir, that has now gone a little bit further, and we are in the process of concretizing yet another aspect of this relationship, which would see Roraima in Brazil come into the mix, especially with respect to us being able to continue to source agricultural products and be able then to have them come into the island. First of all, to assist Barbadians in getting access to good quality food at the cheapest possible prices, and that is one of the benefits, sir, of the South-South cooperative endeavor that we have between Guyana and Suriname, and now we're building out with the northern part of Brazil, because we all know that in every constituency that we represent, the cry has been that the cost of living is too high. And it must be too high if we continue to source from places which have been the traditional source markets alone. And we know that the difficulties faced by the United States and by England and so on have been astronomical. And the level of inflation in the United Kingdom has itself been, almost beyond belief. But we will never be able to do better unless we develop new areas of approaching trade. And one of them really is South-South cooperation, which is what we see rolled out between ourselves and Guyana, ourselves and Suriname, and ourselves in Brazil. With respect to the specifics of where we are going in the future, as I said, Minister, I do not only want this to be my voice that you're hearing, so I would want to invite Minister Husbands to say a few words on this as well, and also our Senior Foreign Service Officer, Sandra Gittins, and then if need be, I will add to the mix.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister. Good morning to the Chair. And my apologies for my late arrival. I was attending to a launch of a junior stock exchange for Barbados and MSMEs this morning. On Guyana, probably one of the most exciting things that we've engaged in as a country, and it has proven to be an excellent initiative that we have undertaken in order to build relationships with them and in order for us to benefit from the very natural growth in their GDP. We need to be a strategic part of it. The renewable energy is an area in which we can definitely work with them on, and the issue of housing, and as you know, efforts have started in that area, but it goes beyond that. When Barbados was hit with the problem, the region as a whole, on the rise in animal feed, this was of great concern to us because it meant that making available nutritious quality meats to the Barbadian consumer was going to be difficult because of the expense. So what we've sought to do, well, we had to put in place short-term efforts to try to control the cost of animal feed. One of the things that we felt was important for the medium term was that we were able to liaise with Guyana, liaise with Suriname, Belize, Trinidad, and look to see if they could begin to produce the inputs that we're going to need for animal feed so that we could have certainty of supply. And because those would come in zero rated, hopefully we'll be able to control the cost of animal feed. And I must say that the response by those countries to that effort was immediately very positive, and Guyana started putting more acres of their land into the production of cassava and soya, corn, and so on. Belize and Suriname as well followed suit. Trinidad had already started. So this would give us the food security which we need in order to be able to benefit from their presence. So along with general food security, when you have hurricanes, we also have this initiative in terms of animal feed production. And we're hoping that as that comes to fruition, that it will begin to flow into the Barbadian space. In relation to one of the things that would be of regret is that it took us a long time really to respond to the opportunities in Guyana. And what we did, we subsequently started to accelerate our engagement, and a number of visits were made there, and we had connections with their private sector. We had meetings with their chamber, with Go Invest, etc. And what we were able to do was to pull together close to 300 Barbadian persons who were interested in doing business in Guyana here. We also had them visit us in Barbados. Some of them visit us in Barbados so that we could start to put entrepreneurs together, because one of the things that the Guyana relationship requires is joint initiatives. They want to be able to have the Guyanese entrepreneur link with a CARICOM entrepreneur and together make a joint investment in some area so that both Guyana domestically and the regional body, CARICOM, could actually benefit from the growth and development in Guyana. And what has happened since then is that not only have they continued those exchange visits, but the Ministry of Industry, through their Export Barbados, has been able to put a commercial attaché into Guyana. This was extremely important because unless you have someone on the ground actually doing some work in identifying who are the key persons to speak with, who are the people to engage, and be able to guide the Barbadian enterprises into the space, it means that it would take too long for our enterprises to start to benefit from presence in Guyana. And the excitement around Guyana was so strong that a group of 20 service providers got together and formed the Guyana Barbados Group. And they have been going down and were actually part of the group that went to visit Arima, etc. And they have formulated a plan in which they are seeking now to engage the space to be able to do services in Guyana. One of the areas that they're looking at would be the area of training in tourism, because Guyana wants to build out its tourism product. The world over believes that Barbados has a tremendous advantage and expertise in the area, and so they are looking at the possibility now of being able to provide the necessary tourism training to assist Guyana in building out its tourism product. But none of this is possible without the efforts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to build the platforms necessary for the Guyana engagement. And this is where the tremendous work done by the ambassador and by our senior foreign service officer, Sandra Gittins, is important. They have to lay the foundation and the platforms on which all of these engagements can take place so that Barbados can definitely benefit from its engagement. So I will ask the Senior Foreign Service Officer, Sandra Gittins, to share what are the things they've put on the ground that has enabled us to be able to engage Guyana well.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, Honourable Ministers. I'm excited to report that in 2022, on July 5th at the 43rd Heads of Government meeting, Barbados and the Cooperative Republic of Guyana signed the St. Barnabas.
Officer, I know you are excited to report, and that is well appreciated, but just give your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sandra Gittins, Senior Foreign Service Officer for the CARICOM Caribbean Relations Division at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. As I indicated earlier, on the 5th of July, 2022, Barbados and the Cooperative Republic of Guyana signed the St. Barnabas Accord. The St. Barnabas Accord was conceptualized in October 5th, 2021, after a visit with President Ali and Prime Minister Motley. And I'm sure you can remember that all members of government attended that meeting. And during that meeting, they identified specific areas for cooperation. These areas not only will help in terms of our national development and national interests, but it makes Barbados and Guyana become a model for integration in the Caribbean. And it can show how two countries can work together without there being competition, but more complementarity. As Minister, Senior Minister, I do recall that you were first out of the box when you attended that visit in Guyana in terms of housing. So under the St. Barnabas Accord, as I said, you have tourism, where there's joint tourism public advertising for the two countries. There's joint ventures in terms of promoting each country. So you can go to Guyana and have that ecotourism and come to Barbados and have a different experience. In terms of education-wise and in terms of what is happening, one of the first steps that the Prime Minister took was to say, look, our private sector needs to know what is happening in Guyana. And so you will see that every night on CBC News, you have that report and update of what is taking place in Guyana. You have a news segment. So there's an exchange of information as well. In terms of mining, there's work happening there. In terms of energy, there's work happening there. There's a vast set of initiatives under the St. Barnabas Accord that identify areas of cooperation. I must say where we are seeing maximum outcome and opportunities is in the area of agriculture. This helps the Barbados and the region indeed, to deal with the matter of food security, to deal with the matter of our 25 by 25 initiative, in which we are trying to reduce the imports on food bill for Barbadians. So I'm excited by what is there. What we are doing is seeking to replicate what we have with Guyana, with other CARICOM member states. We know that if we build up our relationships, strengthen our relationships with other CARICOM member states, as I said before, it will help the regional integration project. I can tell you, honorable ministers, that in terms of trade, there is cooperation between Go Invest and Export Barbados, BIDC, and there's actually a cabinet paper that is supposed to come shortly to the cabinet in terms of having an officer from the BIDC situated at Go Invest to continue the work that we have. So I can also tell you that Guyana already has an officer here. So there's an exchange of people to people exchange where civil servants, people are actually working together. But before that, honorable ministers, we had, in terms of tourism, we had a person from Guyana being trained here at the Crane Hotel. We had 7 officers, 7 hospitality workers from Guyana who were here for about a period of 3 months. And then we also have persons who are also enjoying scholarships in terms of agriculture, fruit processing being one important area. We also have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, a support agreement with Guyana and Barbados, and we've actually done training it's a very reciprocal nature in terms of our engagement, and therefore, as I say, it sets the stage as a model for other regions, and we are, as I said before, we're trying to replicate it. So there's a lot happening. So when we reach out to the ministry, we encourage you to, provide the feedback that we are asking for in terms of advancing the initiatives. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, I probably would just want to say a few words more. The beauty of the relationship that we have with Guyana is that it is allowing us, as Senior Foreign Service Officer Gittins just indicated, allowing us to be able to resolve some of the age-old humbugs that this economy has had to confront. We have, for the longest time, carried on average every year a $700 to $800 million food import bill. We now are able to source cheaper food cheaper costed food of comparable or better quality than that which we have traditionally been able to secure. I would want to say as well that it allows us to lay the foundation, as we've already started to do, to now translate this opportunity into value-added industry for Barbados and employ Barbadian people. The creation of a food terminal in Barbados, which will see that food coming from Guyana and also coming from northern Brazil and from Suriname, coming into this country, whether it may be ground provisions like sweet potatoes, et cetera, yams. You then have an opportunity, sir, to blast freeze and to package these things and then sell them into the Barbadian diaspora and the Caribbean diaspora across the world. For example, there are literally thousands of West Indians living in England, and we have more than 26 flights a week going to England. Mr. Chairman, the same principle applies with Toronto, the same principle applies with the United States of America. So we create linkages that lend value in order for this country, through the efforts of the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade endeavor, to be able to advance the economic well-being of the country. With respect to our ability to have proper housing and quality housing, again, sir, it is a challenge of the government. We have set ourselves the task of getting to 10,000 homes over the course of a 5-year period. Now that means you have to bring a variety of fields of endeavor to get to that figure, because never in history has anybody gotten anywhere near that in Barbados. One arrangement that we have coming out of Guyana is the Duravilla homes. Green Heart timber houses, extremely durable, able to withstand hurricane force winds, I think at category 3, sir. I'm subject to correction by that, on that, but I think it is category 3. Affordable, sir, energy efficient, and can be established once the foundation is done, can be erected within 4 to 6 weeks. Now, Mr. Chairman, again, part of the partnership and the value of the partnership is seen in how it redounds to the benefit of the people in your constituency. So while there are those in your constituency who will be getting homes, sir, through the traditional means, because by no stretch of the imagination are we going to alienate the contractors and the artisans in Barbados. But equally, there has to be some additional effort brought to bear so that we can move further, faster, better to deliver to those folks who need their own homes and who, sir, we know have been placed on waiting lists that are over 18,000 long at the National Housing Corporation.
Thank you, Senior Minister. I want to switch completely to a different question. Some time ago, the current president of the United States spoke about something called a global minimum tax rate. And I think they were looking at setting it at 15%. Now, you and I know that when we came to office, we did a conversion and we brought our tax rates to essentially 5%, which means our external companies or everybody, internal companies, everybody was at 5% and less as they went higher and higher up in terms of their revenues, with banks being like 1% for then of the 30 million in those ranges. So I know we haven't heard a lot about it recently, but I know that it's still on the table for many of the European and American countries. And I would want to ask if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is tracking this, and also what plans would you have, or what ideas can you share with the people of Barbados about this move of the developed world to bring this concept of a minimum global tax rate?
That's a very good question, Senior Minister, because of the fact that we, though it does not as a specific I suppose, discipline fall within the immediate remit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. It is more international business discipline. The reality is, sir, that there has to be that synergy. One of the things about this ministry is that it acts as an umbrella. This ministry touches and assists and facilitates almost every ministry's endeavor across.
So maybe I'm calling on your experience in that side of things as well.
Well, so be it. No problem there. But this ministry, therefore, has a duty to facilitate the wide cross-section of ministerial efforts in Barbados. Your question is relevant because what we did when I say we, I mean this Barbados Labour Party administration under the Mayor Amor Motley leadership, what we did was to create the most competitive tax framework to be found anywhere in the Western Hemisphere, if not in the world. And we did this very deliberately because we wanted to be able to attract investment to the country. Now, there are not many places where you can have value-added business efforts taking place above board, properly regulated, and at the same time, you're only paying between 1% to 5% in terms of corporation tax. What the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has to do, and does continue to do, is to reach out to the European Union and to the Biden administration and other concerned elements to continue to make sure that at the table for conversation on global tax matters is the government of Barbados. Now, it is important because very closely aligned to this question of global tax rates is the issue of how we preserve for this country our competitiveness internationally. The issue of correspondent banking and de-risking, which simply means that if you wish to do business, as you know well, Senior Minister, outside of Barbados, you're going to have to be able to move your money into another capital. And very often, because of the limited reach of the banks that we have here, we have to therefore rely on another bank to provide those correspondent banking facilities so that your money can go where it needs to go. It is not only about commerce, however, it is also about the old lady in your constituency or mine who needs to get some money sent down to her, remittance, because family overseas know that Grand is still keeping 2 or 3 children that are not her own, but really and truly helping the family overseas to get through. And so money got to be sent back. And if you don't have the correspondent banking facilities, then you can't get the money here. And it therefore becomes part of the again, I use the word existential. It is about our existence and the quality of life and the standard of living that we've grown to know, love, and want to secure. Now, if those things are threatened, as in fact they now are, by virtue of international movements, it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to work with other departments of government to make sure that we are able to mount suitable and adequate responses. One such response we saw right here before our eyes last year, around the middle of last year, when the Prime Minister was able to host here in Barbados the first regional interface between the United States congressional leadership and the CARICOM leadership on this vital matter that threatens the welfare and the well-being financially of all of us who have to move money out of Barbados and across this hemisphere and the wider world. I should say in closing, specifically, we do not intend to do anything with respect to our 1% to 5% tax rate. The world itself has not settled on President Biden's proposal, and it would be extremely silly of us to remove that which is working well and cannot be challenged internationally at this point. What we will do is to wait, we will watch, and again, we will be at the table for multilateral discussions on these matters because it is by no stretch of the imagination is a clear-cut matter. So there are even those in the United States administration who do not share the view that this 15% global tax rate should come into existence. But as I think I said, we advocate internationally for the adoption of an international understanding on this matter.
And just to add to what Senior Minister has shared, because as he said, technically, it is not a foreign affairs, foreign trade central activity, but part of our remit is really to support and advocate and boost wherever we can the advocate for what it is Barbados wants in relation to matters such as the global minimum tax rate and the correspondent banking. And what we've been able to do through our various embassies is to be able to speak with representatives from a number of different countries advocating for what is needed to protect Barbados, because this is the problem. If we don't solve these issues of the minimum tax rate and the issue of correspondent banking, the expansion of trade and the investment we're doing in trade is not going to occur because you cannot settle your bills. So it means it will deeply constrain the GDP of the country. So for example, with the Organization of African and Caribbean and Pacific States, what we have sought to do is to get allies now to work with us and to raise their voices in every arena that they're in to speak about these matters, whether it's the correspondent banking, whether it's the blacklisting, whether it's the global minimum tax rate. And I believe that our former ambassador to Brussels would be able to shed more light on how we carry the fight for Barbados in relation to these matters. Acting PS Joanne Skinner will share on the work at the OACP and seeking to get support for Barbados around these issues.
Go ahead.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Honourable Ministers, Mr. Chairman. I am Joanne Skinner, Acting Permanent Secretary in the absence on vacation of the Substantive Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Thank you very much, Minister. Indeed, as Minister Husbands indicated, having access to this much larger organization in which we are members allows us to put on the table and set out very clearly what Barbados has been doing, how we are affected by the decisions taken at the OECD and by the larger countries based on their own interests, and what we would like to see put in place or to be carved out to suit our interest based on our size and the limitations that our size presents for us on the global scene. And having access to this 79-member organization of like minds to a large extent, which are also facing much the same situation, where we have seen with the OECD listings and the European Union listings that those listed are generally similar. We're developing countries, many of which are small, and many that were not very diversified in their economies, and appear to be those that the EU have found to be the easiest ones with which to set examples, not only the European Union, but also the OECD. And to some extent, it also means giving an opportunity for us to identify some of the areas that maybe we can work with other partners to build out and to buttress for the future and future trade relations and future investment opportunities, etc. And so if we take advantage of these bodies for the development of declarations, resolutions, global statements, with which then we can engage those partners that have chosen to list us, I think it puts us in much better stead for changing the international landscape as far as these issues are concerned, especially where there are lists that are negative for our development and our economic growth. There's also one additional point to be raised here, and that is a decision or resolution adopted at the United Nations General Assembly, which called for the issue of the global minimum tax and other tax governance related matters that are global in nature to be taken out of such restricted membership bodies and dealt with at the broader multilateral level of the United Nations. Barbados certainly supports that, but we also recognize that we are involved in a process of tax governance that was generated from the OECD and of which we participate in some of their multilateral conventions. And so we have to balance those two processes. We need to see that these are treated on a more multilateral global level, but at the same time recognizing that there are aspects and expertise that needs to be leveraged within other bodies where we are members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. My third question, if I can switch again, has to do with overseas missions. Now, Minister, I want to really applaud you and your team for the tremendous work that you have done with the traditional missions. That's the first thing. But more importantly, with the non-traditional mission, as you said, work being done in Africa, and I know you have a mission in Panama as well, and another country that I have family that I was able to visit when I visited Panama. And I'm impressed with how Barbados has started not only to look at the traditional UK, USA, Canada, and Geneva, I think it was also, but also now to look at other locations, because we have to understand South-South trade and South-South relations, and recognizing that there is importance with not only our traditional, but looking at to seek new places. And with that, I don't know if I'm asking this one out of turn, but what additional places are you looking at to establish missions for the people of Barbados, if any?
Well, Minister, I think I'd indicated in my initial statement that above and beyond the work we've already done, as you identified, Panama, we have gone to Ghana, we've gone to Kenya, we've also gone to the United Arab Emirates. It is intended during the course of this financial year that we also recognize the importance of going into Ireland. We were colonized in 1627. In the last few years of the 1620s, 50,000 Irishmen would have been transplanted here forcibly. Interestingly enough, the punishment for defying Cromwell was called being Barbadoed. You're sent to Barbados. And you were, this was a form, obviously not chattel slavery, but a form of 7-year slavery, essentially. We've come a long way with respect to Ireland since then. There are now a number of Irish investments in this country. In my constituency in particular, we have the palatial Sandy Lane, which is obviously well known to all of us. But above and beyond that, there are others. And more are, as you know, on tap. There are also direct flights to Barbados now via Aer Lingus, and with that has come Irish tourism. And they are a substantial European Union partner. It is of significance because of the fact that the United Kingdom has left the European Union, as we know, through Brexit. And it is important that we have an English-speaking country with whom we can forge alliances, especially in interests that we have with the European Union, which are quite considerable. Those are the reasons broadly at a policy level why we have targeted Ireland, and we have already initiated, and the funds being made available to this ministry in these estimates will allow us to bring to closure the efforts to open a new mission in Ireland. But I would want to invite P.S. Rudder to speak a little bit more on the operational aspects, not only of what we were hoping to do in Ireland, but quite frankly, to give the Chamber the benefit of understanding what it is that we've been able to achieve and how we go about these things with respect to Ghana and Kenya. And you can pick one of the other ones, P.S.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Chairman, Honourable Minister, distinguished representatives, my name is Simone Rudder. I am Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. As Senior Minister Simmons says, we And in response, sir, to your query, we have opened missions recently in Africa, also the United Arab Emirates, and we're looking at Ireland. What is it that we're doing? Barbados is seeking to increase its external footprint and engagement internationally and across the globe. And why are we doing this? We're doing it so that the interests of Barbados and Barbadians can be pursued and advanced and advocated for throughout the globe. So not just any longer in the traditional countries or northern access to the north into Europe, as you know, but also finding those synergies, and we spoke earlier about complementarity, the complementarities and commonalities in relationships in Africa. The Prime Minister has given it an acronym, the ROAD, the Road for our Atlantic Destiny, claiming our Atlantic Destiny, but it's also the road and the bridge there. And in countries, and so each of our new missions, each of the areas to which Barbados has expanded our engagement, we have different work programs for them. But generally, we are looking to advance our key productive sectors. Minister just spoke about tourism. We're seeking an increased market penetration for exports of our goods and services. We're seeking to identify opportunities for inward foreign direct investment into Barbados. We're seeking to identify areas for technical assistance and cooperation, which once again will benefit Barbados and Barbadians. And each of the sectors in this country, as I recall that Senior Minister Simmons would have said that what we do overseas is to represent all of Barbados's interests. Indeed, it's well known that foreign policy is the sum of interests of the domestic interests, and that is whether it be foreign diplomatic policy or foreign international trade policy. I would wish to, if I may, just finish off by noting that there are several different types and forms of representation. We have our missions, which include embassies and high commissions, which are at the capital or in the capital of third countries. And we also have consulates general, which are in cities scattered throughout any given country based on the interests that we have determined and identified for that city. And we have honorary consuls who are either Barbadian nationals, friends of Barbados, or nationals of that third country who we've identified as being particularly influential and having good access, be it to the political powers that be, to the markets that be, to the areas that we are interested in, goods and expanding our export for goods and services. So we have those forms of representation in a country, and also to even further expand our reach and our engagement. Almost each of our ambassadors have a series of non-resident accreditations which take us throughout Europe. The United Arab Emirates will take us into the Gulf states, Panama into Central America, Africa into the West and East Africa, etc. Thank you.
I want to thank you for your response, and I must say that I welcome and fully support opening that embassy in Ireland. And what I also didn't hear you say, but I must tell you, there are many, many students that leave Barbados and study in Dublin. I was one, and I lived in Dublin, and I went to the Royal College of Surgeons there, together with other doctors. Dr. Juliet Skinner comes to mind, who was also there. And it was another aspect to to having those missions and those locations is the support that they give to the students who are on the ground at the time. So I think that it is a brilliant opportunity, and I look forward to seeing when it becomes a reality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Senior Minister. Honourable member for the city of Bridgetown.
Thank you very much, and good morning. First, I want to say congratulations to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is not a ministry you usually hear a lot from. As the minister pointed out, it's the first opportunity to present in this format. But I'm one that understands the importance of such a ministry in terms of not only navigating the relationship between Barbados and the globe, but also in finding opportunities that can lead to the direct and indirect empowerment of our citizens. With that said, though, I want to first start on a very topical issue, which is the issue of Haiti. Now, Barbados and CARICOM historically has sounded its voice and support in relation to a number of nations in CARICOM who faced difficulties over the years. And here we have the first independent Caribbean nation, the first black-led republic. As a reminder, we are the last black-led republic in the world, who would have gotten its independence in 1804, which means it is about to celebrate 220 years of independence. And we see the situation in there continue to deteriorate. From a healthcare perspective, I can't remember the last time I hear about outbreak of cholera. Economic perspective, social and political stability perspective, it just continues to deteriorate. So my first question to the minister and the ministry is, what is Barbados' position and what is Barbados doing along with the rest of our brothers and sisters in CARICOM to ensure that we continue the strong tradition of operating as one in this region, this Caribbean CARICOM region?
Let me thank you for the question, Honourable Member, because it is a very important issue which I think we would have to look at. I want to begin by saying that Barbados, like by extension CARICOM, has been anxious to offer assistance to Haiti. And we have, frankly, been a country that was early out of the gates at every opportunity to show that kind of solidarity and lend that kind of assistance to Haiti. I recall well in 1994-95, for example, that along with Trinidad, Barbadian personnel would have gone into Haiti to assist with matters of security. I believe that under President Aristide, much later, probably 10 years or so later, there was a need for us to be able to do so again, and we did. I think that the structure of my answer has to be placed within a certain context. The last election held in Haiti may have been more than, I would hazard perhaps as far back as 2016, 2017. Elections were scheduled for November of 2021, but then were postponed. It is a fact to say that right now there are no elected members of that Congress. And that has led to some of the circumstances of instability, because the governance structure itself has started to fall apart. The good news is that the Haitian National Police is still a functioning entity. It is direly in need of training. It is direly in need of resources. There is a clear position taken by the heads of government in CARICOM that there will have to be the offering of humanitarian assistance to the people of Haiti. And perhaps I should say that type of assistance has already started to be offered by other entities across the world. The situation in Haiti, however, is such that there, according to the information that we get, that there may well be that type of assistance languishing even on the docks in Haiti, because getting it out of a ship and into the wide communities of the country is exceptionally difficult if you do not have an ability to get past the gang violence and internecine warfare that is taking place there. We have, at CARICOM level, agreed that in terms of assistance, we will be looking at some of the basics. So that I can tell you that in Barbados's case, we have an appreciation of the fact that we cannot offer the same quantity of food as Guyana can. Obviously, Guyana is thinking in terms of thousands of tons of food, whether it be rice or ground provisions or meat. Trinidad and Tobago is taking on a similar type of perspective. Suriname as well. We probably will have to be looking at more along the lines of financial assistance to supplement that type of effort, to reach out as well by use of our own influence to our African friends. As you know, part of this whole dialogue that we're having here is that we have gone to the point where we've expanded our diplomatic footprint into Africa and built personal relationships at government level with the African community. And the French African countries, I think the heads of this region have agreed, we have a potential ally. Because again, the common heritage of a black people who understand the trial and the trauma of colonialism, in most particularly in the Francophonie or the French African country, they are speaking the language that the Haitians speak. And that is an area where we believe that we can also find some assistance from. We also are committed at the regional level to offer assistance with respect to some of the training which is necessary at the Haitian National Police level. And obviously, there will only be so much that a country of Barbados' size can do, and equally so much that a country of Trinidad's size and Guyana's size. But collectively, including Jamaica and the Bahamas and so on, we believe that we can assist with regard to that type of training. We have, and I don't want to go into too much detail on it, we've just come out last month, our CARICOM heads of government meeting, and we have even more recently had another follow-up meeting with respect to the matter of the security situation in Haiti. It is not for me to announce that which the heads will announce. But the fact of the matter is it is under active engagement. There is obviously an ongoing discussion with countries like Canada, and I think the news has already been put out there that Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, would have led a delegation into Haiti last week, where he would have met with political parties, a non-governmental organization, or organizations, plural. He would have met with a wide cross-section of the Haitian community. Their concern, as I am understanding the report, is primarily, first of all, how do we solve the security situation? How do we stop the bleeding? The fact of the matter is that is really the most critical point of departure. As I speak to you, there are systems of governance that we take for granted here in Barbados that are completely broken down. You cannot have a society where children and women are being attacked and raped in the street. You cannot have a society where the court system is falling apart. You cannot have a society where the police are under threat and maybe outgunned and lesser resourced than the people who they have to police. You cannot have a society where the public health structure is disintegrating. So that we have to continue the dialogue with countries like Canada, and quite frankly, as I said, the French African states, the United States of America, and France itself, because at different levels and in different ways, there's a role for everybody to play. What I think is also becoming very clear is that the tortured history of intervention is not a route that people want to travel again. Even within Haiti, where people feel themselves under tremendous pressure, there is a view that to go over one more time, and it probably has been done countless times, of having yet another intervention of a military type nature, does not help the situation. And so therefore we have to find a way of stopping the bleeding, beginning serious discussions with a view to restitution of those governance processes that we have just outlined some of them, those things that we hold dear, the public health circumstances, the education circumstances so that children can start going back to school, the public safety circumstances so that women and girls are not being assaulted, getting the ammunition off of the streets. Those are the primary concerns. And of course, outfitting and training the Haitian National Police so that they are better able to provide the security function that they have to provide. I believe that the heads of government will make a statement on this matter in the not too distant future because, as I said, it is right now attracting their most deliberate attention.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that. I am heartened to hear your response in relation to this issue. I think we can get on a very serious note and understand that if it is not a failed state, it is close to being one. And I'm really calling on CARICOM not just to join the bandwagon of aid, but to look at how we can truly help in the medium to long term in not only just stopping the bleeding, but stopping the blades, which means understanding the root cause and helping Haiti from a more structural perspective. I, however, move on to my second question, which is in relation to the missions. And when the Honourable Member for Christchurch West went in that direction, I was hoping he would answer the question and give me opportunity to answer another question. But he went in a totally different direction, so I'm going to come where I had originally intended to attack this from, and that is the issue of our missions across the world. In speaking to my constituents on this matter, I was a little disheartened with the fact that they just see our missions and different things like that, even aid, as money that can be spent here. And I was at pains ready to point out to a group of them recently that I don't see it as spending, but I see it as investment. Every dollar spent, I believe that the ministry should be able to tell us how much money we're able to get in on our return on investment. I want to highlight the commercial and cultural attaché in the British High Commission in Ghana, Phil Phillips, and a model that he has that I appreciate a lot, where not only he helps me to understand what they're doing in acting in our name in these missions, but he helps me to understand the what, the when, the how, and the why. And that is where I can sit in here and I can tell you, I have an idea of what's happening in the mission in Ghana. I know the entities, I know the dates, the participants, the expectations, and the agreement. And I just want to give the House an example of what I call a best case scenario or best practice in relation to reporting from missions. I could tell you that on February 10th, they met with BCC in relation to hospitality training in Ghana. I could tell you on February 24th, I can see a picture of our Barbadian sugar on the shelf in the biggest supply chain in Ghana at 35 cedis, which is about $5.70 Barbados for a 2-pound bag. I can tell you on the 27th, they met with the farmers. I can tell you as late as Tuesday, they met with NCF and the credit unions on Wednesday, and I can go on. But the reason I mention that is because a lot of people don't understand what is happening and the hard work that goes into the missions. They don't know if the mission's working and what the missions are doing, the ones that are working. So my question to the ministry is, what plans do you have to ensure that these missions are extremely effective and bringing return on investment, A? And B, what plans do you have to improving the communication after these things are done, that Barbadians can be assured that when our taxpayers' money is spent in these missions, that it is not just spending, but it is definite investment for the betterment of Barbados and all Barbadians?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. And I'm really happy that you've asked the question because it really is, it allows me to speak to the country in the same way that I would have spoken to my colleagues who are arrayed next to me and behind me. I think that, and they have heard me say this often, very often the light is being hidden under a bushel. And I am sure that you will agree with me. You are I recall when I have been almost as seasoned as you in terms of length of service in this chamber. That takes me back almost 20 years. And the fact is that I felt then that there was a need to confront some of the weaknesses up front. And I respect the fact that you have identified and confronted a glaring weakness. We have not really been telling our story in terms of what the missions are achieving, and that is something that we have to correct. Let me start at the very beginning with the first question, however. I've taken a position where, and this is now enshrined into our estimates, I have already had a meeting with the entire North American team. I did that on the way to the Bahamas for the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting last month. So I left the country a day early so I could have a meeting with the North American team, which we held in Miami, simply because I had to pass through Miami to get to the Bahamas. So I brought them all down, and we have spoken clearly about the way forward. The cost of maintaining missions abroad has to be transcended by, not equaled, transcended by the value of the technical cooperation that the ministry is bringing, that the mission is bringing to Barbados, or the value of the trade and commerce that the mission is stimulating for the benefit of Barbados, or the financial assistance which is being garnered by the efforts over there, wherever that mission is, for the benefit of Barbados. Or it can be a collection of them. But gone, I think, forever must be the days when you have a mission, but that mission is not being held accountable in terms of the dollars and cents value of what the technical cooperation derived for benefit of Barbados and Barbadians, the value of the trade and commerce being stimulated, the value of the financial assistance and so on, which is being generated. There has to be a way in which we are more accountable and holding the missions to that level of accountability. However, having said that, it is not just a simple question of that level of accountability, but our own accountability to the people who finance, which is the taxpayers, your constituents and mine, who finance the efforts of Barbados' diplomatic agenda. And that is why I began the way I began, Mr. Chairman, because I think that it is far too long that has passed without this ministry being able to talk to the public, or the public hear about what happened in foreign affairs and foreign trade. Because even though our budget perhaps represents less than 3% of the national budget, the truth of the matter is we are doing work that is extremely important, and there should be an understanding of what we do and how it links back to the well-being of your constituents and mine. And so therefore, Honourable Member, you are right. There has to be a better dialogue. I am exceptionally proud and pleased about the work that Mr. Phillips is doing in Ghana. And like you, I receive, like you, the almost daily reports of meetings and successes, howsoever large, howsoever small, but he lets you know who he's met with, what is the derived value of the meetings, what it is all about. And that really is part of the commercial diplomacy effort which we have introduced. And you will recall in my initial statements I said we are placing great emphasis on two vital support pillars for our diplomatic effort: commercial diplomacy and cultural diplomacy. And we have officers now who we are positioning. Mr. Phillips is one of them, and there are others who we will be positioning in the ministries and building out that network. It can't all happen in one fell swoop because, frankly, we don't have the money, but we have to get to that point. Minister Husbands is particularly passionate on the question of the commercial diplomacy, so I want to give her a chance to speak to this as well, because it allows us to make sure that we are not just talking the talk, but we are walking the walk of making sure that we marry the relationship between the BTMI, Invest Barbados, the BIDC, all of those different entities, and the efforts of the ministry. And quite frankly, that we bring into the mix the business people of this country, large, medium, and small, because small people are exporting things from Barbados as well. All right? I come out of the Ministry of Business. I know about the wine clusters. People who making wine in their home, but finding the wine being sold in St. Lucia and in Latin America. That making a home, in fact, in the constituency of the honourable member sitting next to you, there was a disaster where a lady lost her house in St. Andrew, but she was a winemaker, micro business person, but she was an export and foreign exchange earner for Barbados. So let us be very clear about this. And we have to make sure that we link their efforts to the commercial efforts of the country at that scale. And of course, at a larger scale, we know, I give you a very simple example, that every rum producer in Barbados wants to be on the west coast of the United States of America, from Seattle all the way down to the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world, which is California. That's where they need to be. But to get them there, we need to make sure that we have the commercial diplomacy going on to open that door and that corridor to literally, I don't want to say hundreds, but tens of millions of people who really and truly are not connected to Barbados, but must become connected to Barbados. So it is a very important issue. I would invite Minister Husbands to speak. And after her, I have in mind another officer, but we will get there.
All right, thank you so much, Senior Minister. I was very happy for the question because the missions do a lot of work. A lot of the things that the regular line ministries do, the beginning of their work actually happens with Foreign Affairs laying the foundation, negotiating the conditions, and providing the framework within which a ministry will get on with its business. And I'm sure that the officer, the senior minister will share with you about the Belt and Road and farm labor and a whole host of things that come from the different missions across this nation. They work hard for us. In particular, one of the things that we wanted to do was to strengthen and intensify their work and remove some of the obstacles that prevent some of what they do from translating into meaningful benefits for Barbadians here in Barbados. So what this meant was that we needed to set up a network that was well organized, that had a customer relationship management platform, so that when missions generated interest in Barbados, whether it was for technical cooperation or trade, there was one portal in which that information can actually go into that would allow the other ministries then that have to action these things to be able to work with taking that lead and translating it into a meaningful benefit for Barbadians. So what we're doing is intensifying what we're doing by creating such a platform, and we're currently working on it. The first thing we did was within the commercial diplomacy network, we established training for all of our for officers within the ministry. It's divided into 2 tranches. We were able to identify from our stakeholder units, which would be Export Barbados, Invest Barbados, and later with the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., identify which markets are of critical importance to them right now. And what we did was to put the embassies and high commissions that we have, the missions that we have, into training to learn how to do commercial diplomacy from a place of confidence. Now, we do have people who do that, and we do have people who do it well, but every single person in the mission is not trained that way. We want to train every single person so that there's a greater impact. The second thing we wanted to do in relation to that was to develop a work program, and that's the stage that we're at now. Working with the service providers and the missions to evolve a work program so that each mission can identify what are the critical things in my jurisdiction that are of importance to Barbados, and therefore how can we work on promoting Barbados's interests, Barbados's goods and services, its needs for technical cooperation in this jurisdiction. We have compiled via the estimates a list of all of the ministries that have needs, and we've identified the needs that we believe are ones that we can work through our missions to get those resources on their behalf. So whether you're talking about sports and youth programs, whether you're talking about the elderly, whether you're talking about gender and women, the people who are handicapped, if you're talking about reduction of crime, if you're talking about housing, if you're speaking about education, all of the various ministries that would have technical cooperation needs, we've made a list, and these will be made available to the mission so that they can specifically hunt for the international agencies that supply these resources to developing countries like ours. The second level that will happen to that particular network is not only they will be given the goods and services that we want to sell and the technical cooperation needs, we are going to be revamping the honorary consular network, where we're going to increase the number of honorary consuls and increase them in the areas where we have specific strategic interests, and identify persons who either have an entree into that particular sector, into that particular world, or who have the skills and contacts that we believe will help us secure business for Barbados. And this will allow us then to be able to go right across the landscape that is important to us to be able to build business. Now, just to help you understand a little of what we're doing, would be, for example, in Venezuela, when we had a shortage of fuel here in Barbados, just in recent months, it was the Venezuelan embassy or mission that worked with the Venezuelan people, government, to identify the fuel, etc., and they're now in negotiation. Without that, Barbados would be having difficulties down the road in securing fuel. That's the kind of impact that we have on the average Barbadian by being able to generate things that we believe would be helpful. I want to leave some time for the other person to share some of the more practical things that we've been doing and how they've benefited Barbados.
Haven't heard the minister. Senior Minister, didn't hear it.
Sorry, I said, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to take the opportunity to ask Permanent Secretary Rudder to say a few words on this.
So given.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Honourable Representative for the question. And it is indeed a very valid one. There's not much left for me to add after the two ministers have spoken. But what I would wish to recognize is that Mr. Phillips, who is an erstwhile asset for us, does work in an embassy, in a high commission, with a team, there are a team of them. They're headed by a charge d'affaires, Mrs. Juliette Bab-Riley, and the full team is working to derive these benefits from Western, not just Ghana, but once we get a High Commissioner there, we will be accredited to Western Africa, and so you see those benefits that flow multiplying through Senegal, through Nigeria, etc. I wanted to mention, just to fill in a couple of slots in the picture painted already, that there are other, just because we don't report about it publicly, it doesn't mean that the other missions are not doing it. So we have in the UAE an ambassador and a first secretary who are working assiduously to identify significant investment opportunities with the assistance of Invest Barbados to attract high net worth individuals based in the United Arab Emirates and the Gulf states to invest in Barbados. You're talking about things like Carlisle Bay Development Project and other development projects. How does this affect your constituents? Jobs, flow of money into the country. We have, Minister Husbands mentioned China, the Belt and Road Initiative. We've had an embassy in China for quite some time now, which is tasked inter alia with working with the Chinese government to identify the areas where Chinese financing can be of assistance in the infrastructural development of Barbados. So the Belt and Road Initiative is the portal that the Chinese have created through which a lot of the flow of finance and flows. I've listened to discussions in this august chamber, and you hear about the infrastructural works, be it in the Scotland district, the roads, once again, benefiting every Barbadian. We would, in other specifics, we have throughout the globe, we have, through the Commercial Diplomacy Network, our team members looking at the areas identified by Export Barbados or BIDC in the areas of life sciences and biotechnology, where we can increase our market penetration and help BIDC and Export Barbados to build that flow of revenue to come back into the country from our exports. I also just wanted to speak, and sorry, in terms of other business related, we have our consulates in Miami and Toronto. Why were they chosen to be in Miami and Toronto? They're older missions. It's because we had high numbers of Barbadians there, but we also had significant business opportunities, and they are on the ground doing that. And if I may, I just wanted to mention that we have missions which also are representing and advocating to make sure that the policy space is there to lay the groundwork for the activities. So in Geneva, we have our mission, our permanent mission to the World Trade Organization, which is involved every single day in negotiating to make sure that Barbados's interests as a small, vulnerable economy is represented in the regulatory framework, the trading rules for the multilateral trading system, so that we have not just a level playing field, but also better equity through special and differential treatment, so that small traders, countries like Barbados has 0.0001, maybe a couple more zeros % of world trade, are able to sit at the table and benefit. In our capitals, missions in our embassies and high commissions in London, Washington, D.C., Ottawa, Nairobi, I'll talk about that UN, but they, like our UN missions, are there to make sure that the needs that Barbados has, that the space is there, the policy space is there, be it either in a bilateral context through the parliaments of these countries or through the UN missions, the ones in New York, Geneva, and Nairobi now in the international sphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and Ministry, for that response. For one, I don't have a challenge with the investment at all. I see it. I know of one of the missions we were able to negotiate $2 million in scholarships, and that's $2 million US, and we're spending $2 million Barbadian on that particular mission. So they've already exceeded their investment already. So I think I'm very happy with that. As mentioned by Minister Husbands, we have the issue with the assistance with fuel, and you really took it to the top of the class when you draw the line between the mission and my constituency. And the man in the street and the woman in the street can understand the direct link between a mission and investing in some place like Carlisle Bay that can assist the constituents of Nelson Street, the Bayline, the city, and the whole country. So I'm very happy for that. My third and final question that I am allowed to ask at this point in time, because I have many questions, really speaks to one of your strategic goals of embracing and enhancing the Barbadian diaspora. And that is an issue that we've talked a lot about, but I would like to hear some response on the ministry. I have a paper before your ministry called the Sister City Agreement. And this is where I believe that we can reach out to Barbadians across the globe to help assist home. Home as a place that would have invested in their education and where they are today, and I am sure many of them are more than eager to give back to this land. And I believe that programs such as the Sister City program that I am anxious to get out of your ministry and get working is one such initiative that can assist with that. I want to point to the Adopt a Family program and how Barbadians from across the globe were able to assist in our deepest and darkest hour by providing donations to the Adopt a Family program to ensure many here in Barbados during the lockdowns were able to maintain some food on the table. The One Family program that we spoke about is built in a way that half of the requirement is really from philanthropic and donors, and we are proposing that the diaspora help with that as well. Even with the Crime Reduction Fund, I've built it in a way that Barbadians, again, from home and abroad, are able to contribute to their society. So my question for the ministry is, how are we leveraging our citizens, past and present, and I'm talking about Shirley Chisholm with the Sister City arrangement, but also our global figures like Rihanna and other global figures, not to mention the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, our Prime Minister. How are we leveraging these particular figures to ensure that we get some good figures, investment and aid for our country through the embracing and partnering with the Barbadian diaspora as part of your strategic goals of your ministry?
These are powerful assets that we need to leverage in order to gain for Barbados the things that will definitely improve the lives of the average Barbadian. I've been tasked with taking on the diaspora program, and the idea here is to do exactly what you're talking about and taking it all the way up to the creation of a diasporic economy. A diasporic economy is where you so arrange the matters of your economic systems that your diaspora can invest, your diaspora can participate, your diaspora can provide skills, they can provide connections, and so they're able to help us strengthen and broaden the Barbadian network. Now, the first thing that is needed to make that work is you have to be able to find them. The truth is Barbados should have somewhere between 700,000 to 800,000 persons who are part of their diaspora down to 2 generations. We are in danger of losing that last generation because we need to create the linkage and the heartstrings, tie the heartstrings to Barbados so that they begin to see Barbados as their second home where they can invest and they can be a part of what we're doing. And therefore, one of the things we are awaiting is the passing of the immigration bill, which would allow us to be able to provide our diaspora with the opportunity to hold a Barbadian passport down to the 2nd generation. And we want to, since the regathering program came to an abrupt halt. This was where we had started intensifying our diasporic engagement, but this year we are going to recommence that particular program to help us, one, identify more of our diaspora, create a proper database and a portal in which they can put their skills, put the opportunities, if they want to come and lecture on a particular topic, share with us cutting edge things that they know, and people who want to contribute. So that is going to be part of the work for this year. In relation to the Sister City Agreement, we see this as an excellent start for us to engage our people in the United States in a deeper way, doing some practical things together. And our Senior Foreign Service Officer, Jane Brathwaite, she was tasked with helping us to put that together and to work with our Consul General in New York to put the agreement together. And she can share with us on the current status of the sister agreement.
Good morning. Honourable Mr. Chairman, honourable members. My name is Jane Brathwaite, and I am a appointed Senior Foreign Service Officer, but I'm acting Deputy Permanent Secretary at the moment. As Minister Husbands has said, we have been dealing with the Sister Cities Agreement since last year. We are conducting the negotiation of the agreement through our consulate in New York. At the moment, the latest update is that it is back with the ministry. It was vetted by the Solicitor General, and no doubt through your assistance, Minister of State, Minister, we quickly got a response out of the Solicitor General, which is very good news for us. So it did go back through our consulate in New York to the Mayor's office. I will check with the consulate there to make sure that we've got back the right version of the agreement, because it looks as if they may not have taken all of the proposals of the Solicitor General on board. So we will look at that. and we will then look to see how soon we can get the agreement signed. But it's the provisions of the agreement are such that they will enable greater cooperation between Barbados, the Barbadian diaspora, and representatives here in Barbados to promote programs on behalf of the youth, prevention of crime, economic cooperation, and highlight the work and the legacy of Shirley Chisholm, who is the great American Barbadian who felt so comfortable here when her parents brought her here as a child, and has always remembered the benefit of the education that she received here. So we continued to work on that. As others of the ministry have said, the role of the diaspora is very important. Our missions work very closely with the Barbadian associations overseas to keep in touch with Barbadians and to find out information wherever Barbadians are, so that we can encourage them to assist the country. Over the years, we have encountered difficulties when associations want to make donations to the country. Things are held up in the port, or there are high charges imposed, and we would need to make arrangements to have smoother measures put in place to receive those donations. As the minister also said, we have to continue efforts to identify Barbadians and to find out where they are, because when we try to get information from them, they're not always willing to provide all the contact information, so we usually end up with just an email address, but that is okay. We will continue to work with them, and we will be looking to place diaspora officers in several important cities as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I just want to invite the Permanent Secretary to say a few words on this matter as well.
Thank you, Senior Minister. The aspect that I wanted to flag a little more is that of how we pursue and meet the interests of the Barbadian diaspora, Obviously, this ministry, part of our key mandate is to protect and promote the interests of Barbadians and welfare of Barbadians overseas. The engagement with the diaspora is spearheaded by us, but has to be a broad, coordinating and collaborative effort throughout government and private sector and civil society. And this is because there's so many aspects of this that although the Ministry of Foreign Affairs leads through Minister Husbands, the country team for external engagement, that working group on enhanced engagement with the Barbados diaspora, this ministry does not have responsibility for the many facets of engagement with which we have currently with the diaspora, but will also be building out in a revised diaspora engagement platform. So I want to flag that coordination aspect, and also to identify, in addition to all the other areas that we've been talking about, we are looking to, I think you mentioned it, build out a new on philanthropic platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. All I have to say is that I am well pleased, and I ask the ministry to carry on and carry on well. I was given one correction during my thing. I'm in constant contact with my constituency via these questions, because I ask these questions not only on my behalf, but on behalf of my constituency. So they're well pleased with the questions, but more importantly, they're well pleased with the answers. And one last thing, I am reminded that the member for St. Philip West, St. Philip South, is also a global citizen as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I begin by agreeing with Senior Minister Simmons that it is good for this ministry to be in a position to share with the country in matters where sometimes there is lack of knowledge, sometimes there is suspicion. And I'll begin with, there was mention in response to the penultimate question, which had to do with the Belt and Road. There was a mention of the Belt and Road Initiative. The question that I'm posing has to do with the ability of a country like Barbados to navigate the geopolitical situation. And I've had a couple of constituents who, maybe because of listening to particular news sources, have expressed concern about our relationship with China. Now, this forum is not the forum to maybe get into a lot of granular details on the matter. I understand that. But I think I'd like to hear some general response to how does a small country like Barbados, in a world where there is still, we thought it went with the Cold War, but there is still East and West, and there is still the proliferation of information which casts suspicion one way and another, both ways. What can the ministry say to Barbadians about the method that Barbados uses? I know we operate under the rubric of the father of our independence, friends of all and satellites of none. But I would like the ministry, maybe minister or officers, to just share how we, in some broad way, how we navigate those waters.
Honourable member, perhaps the only answer I can give you is that the quotation from the Right Excellent National Hero, which we all repeat, friends of all and satellites of none, is not the be-all and end-all of the statement. He went on to say that ours is a diplomacy not of power, but a diplomacy of development. And I think that is, I believe I had drawn that to the attention of this House at the beginning when I made my remarks. It is an indispensable part of the toolkit of Barbados's foreign policy that we engage on the basis of development. China is itself, in many ways, though it carries the outward appearance of being a superpower, is also in many ways a country that is very much going through developmental stages. I recall well my own surprise arriving in Beijing in 2005 to find that in their capital city there was actually a convention on toilets, because they were trying, like we were and still are, to eradicate the use of pit toilets in their capital city. This has nothing to do with what was happening in far-flung regions. And though it is hard to believe, you have to remember that China is also trying to bring development to over 1 billion with a B people. And that carries with it the substantial issues of how you feed, house, et cetera, et cetera. I say all of that simply to say that our engagement with China, therefore, becomes a lot easier to understand when you recognize that when we talk to them, we are not getting ourselves involved in the issues of American national security. We are getting the ideology of the Western world versus the ideology of the East. What we are getting ourselves involved with is a country, wherever it is possible, that shares a like-minded approach to certain fundamentals, whether those fundamentals are, as I just indicated, helping us to eradicate the scourge of pit latrines from our landscape, or whether those fundamentals are helping us to be able to finance essential parts of our national endeavor. For example, an appropriate sporting facility for our young people to train and compete at, or helping us to make sure that 1/7 of our landscape, which is the Scotland district, can be rehabilitated and repaired and prevented from having the type of slippage of and erosion that I need not tell you about, Honourable Member, because that falls within the scope of your constituency as well as it does within, to some extent, the scope of the constituency of he who is now chairing these proceedings. I would invite the Permanent Secretary to say a few words on this, if she cares to.
Thank you, Minister. I don't think there is really much to add except to emphasize that in the context of the opening, the first statement that Barbados made as an independent country in the United Nations, Barbados conducts its international relations with dozens and dozens of countries around the world. It's bilateral diplomatic relations with dozens of countries around the world in a transparent manner, and it is because we approach these relationships from the position of principle and adherence to international norms. And so once you understand that framework through or within which we operate, then the benefits or the activities that are engendered in the context of any relationship become clearer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought it necessary for some elucidation maybe on the matter, because I get the sense, and this is not from my perspective because I am aware of all that has been shared, but I think I'm hearing sometimes a little bit of suspicion on the part of residents, and I think it is a matter that if we're to be fair to our residents, we have to allow them to understand that we act, as PS said, on a matter of principle, and that we enter relationships like anybody else should, or any country should, with our eyes wide open and aware of what is going on around us. The second question I have has to do with CARICOM. Again, a question from the perspective of constituents, and a question that I've tried to answer from time to time, but I think it could benefit from constituents hearing from those who on a daily basis are working in these areas. And this has to do with CARICOM, particularly the matter of free movement. And the feeling sometimes that even though we are part of CARICOM, that we may be the only country that takes it seriously, and by pushing free movement, we are opening ourselves while not being the beneficiaries. And I think you and I, Minister, Senior Minister, know that that is not the case, but I would like if you could share with Barbadians on that matter, the benefits that we get from being members of CARICOM and the benefits that can accrue from free movement of persons in particular categories of employment.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, the reality is that, again, we have to think along the lines of how best we can ensure the development of Barbados. And that is, as I said at the very beginning, we have a few key interests in the international community. We want, wherever possible, to promote peace. We want to promote security, and we want to promote development. And again, these are things that align with our economic and political and social interests. Now, the free movement of people, I understand, is a matter that can at times be very sensitive. And what we have to do, frankly, is to speak truth as elected members to the powers that have elected us. And I say that very honestly. I wondered aloud and quietly sometimes when, in the period 2003 to 2007, I listened to Barbadians speak as they did then about the number of Guyanese which were here. The truth of the matter is, very often we forget that our very first representative at ambassadorial level, High Commissioner level, to London was Sir Lionel Lacoux, a Guyanese. And we had to rely on the People's Cooperative Republic of Guyana to help Barbados have representation in England because we could not afford to do it ourselves. And very, very often, you know, pride can go before a fall. There are not a lot of people in the Caribbean anymore who are looking at Guyanese and saying, I don't want them here. Quite the contrary, there are a lot of people in the Caribbean who are looking at Guyana and saying, I would like to be there, simply because it is right now the fastest growing economy to be found anywhere on planet Earth. There is a reason why the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas was created as it is, so as to allow for movement of goods, movement of services, movement of capital. And with it must be movement of people as well. I am a person who has been able to practice my profession outside of Barbados. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, there are a number of us here in this place who are parts of professional endeavors where our colleagues, if not us ourselves, have practiced our profession outside of Barbados. And that enables us to go and earn a living, and enables us to make sure that we are able to invest that which we earn back in Barbados for the betterment of our families and our communities. We are not alone. That is a truth that is common right across the Barbadian landscape, not only at the professional level, but at vocational level. I know, for example, in my constituency of a young man who does a pool cleaning business, and he doesn't clean pools only in Barbados. His company is to be found in St. Lucia and in St. Vincent, etc. And he is moving Barbadians to help supply services. Now, the reality is, therefore, that it is part of our development. I made the point that there's only one country, one region in the world with whom we enjoy a trade surplus, and that is the Caribbean community. 60% of all of our goods and services are traded into the CARICOM area. It would be the most ridiculous proposition, therefore, if 60% of our foreign exchange is earned through the business of trading with CARICOM, for us to want to be in a position where we restrict CARICOM nationals' entry into Barbados, because what effectively we would be doing was be cutting our nose to spite our face, as your granny and mine would have told us. And that is not something that I think we would want to do. So that, Honourable Member, the best I can say to you is that we have to explain to those people who have elected us that part of our destiny is, in fact, deepening the relationship with CARICOM, because that is how we earn the foreign exchange, to buy the goods and services that we need in order to make sure that there are improved roads in the constituency of St. Peter. That is how we make sure that we can get more electrical buses on the roads in Barbados, so that the people in my constituency can get to Bridgetown in a timely manner. That is how we make sure that we have the lights on our playing fields. That is how we make sure that we are enabled to flesh out a complete revamp of the educational system by making sure that all of our secondary schools and, yes, government-owned primary schools are refurbished and made comfortable for our children. Those are the things that cost the foreign exchange, and this is how we earn the foreign exchange, through those trade arrangements. And there has to be some give and take, because just as we go to earn, others will come here as well, and it is in a very measured and regulated framework within which that takes place.
I would also like to add that the benefit of free movement helps every Barbadian, because our problem at the moment is the size of our population. And I just want to give you a quick example so the ordinary person can appreciate why you need more people and why movement of people is beneficial to us. If you have to build an airport or a hospital for $1 million and your population is 30,000, then you are going to have to look for, each person is going to have to look for about $3,000 to be able to contribute. sorry, 10,000. If you have 10,000 people, each person will have to contribute $1,000 to make that hospital work in terms of taxation. If, however, your population goes from 10,000 to 30,000, then each person will only have to contribute $33. That's the benefit of increased population, and the only way you can get it is via free movement. When we say people move freely, they're coming as skilled workers, so they're not coming as senior people retiring. They're not coming as ill people that are going to go into hospital and just be a burden. They're people who come with skills, and they're people who come to build. They're also going to be able to contribute to the NIS. This also helps to strengthen the NIS because, as you would have heard, within a couple of years, Barbadians, the average age of Barbadians is going to be 60 years. And a lot of them will be going into retirement by 67. So who's going to fill in the NIS? So it is not only the tremendous benefit, as Senior Minister pointed out, in terms of our being able to do trade, it is also that their presence is a positive impact on each of us, and that is one of the reasons why we need to open our hearts and minds. It is just a matter of having a managed migration policy. That's all it requires. You're not going to flood the place with every and anybody, but you're going to do a managed migration program that is going to allow you to fill in your tax base and allow you to build the skills that you need and have them to be able to build out your sectors and have people then who can actually contribute to the NIS. Otherwise, every Barbadian will have to contribute more to the NIS program. So it is a blessing to us, and I think our citizens need to understand that. Thank you very much. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, ministers. The final question I have is a question that I ask my own ministry officers from time to time. There's a lot of information residing in ministries that public officers are working on a daily basis, a lot of achievements being made. We hear a lot about the British Initiative, the St. Barnabas Accord, and there are many other accords, treaties, and projects and achievements coming from ministries, including this ministry. My question has to do with, well, the question is, do you have, Minister, does the ministry have a plan to share the information in a way that allows Barbadians to become familiar with at least some of the subject matter, some of the components, for example, the St. Barnabas Accord, the British Initiative, and there are others. I know there are others. These are two that we've heard of recently. But is there a plan maybe on social media, GIS, regular media, of giving some bite-sized bits of information to the public so that Barbadians become informed about the various aspects of work and benefits that come from the very good work taking place in the ministry?
Honourable Member, I'm going to let my permanent secretary take the majority of that question because it has been signaled to me that we have to become a little bit more crisp with our answers. But I want just to signal to you that there is a dedicated effort on the part in the ministry to build out now a virtual platform. You would have heard of our metaverse embassy already, which is the first of its kind in the world, I should say. And the intention is to take the business of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade into the community for the purpose of ensuring that there is now a public diplomacy and an understanding of what diplomacy is about and the diplomatic effort. But perhaps I should let PS speak to this matter more substantively.
Thank you, Senior Minister. I don't have a lot more to add. It's really that the crux of this matter, Minister Jordan, like you have said, is that ministries, the Barbadian psyche is one of doing and not necessarily shouting about it. So for the Ministry of Foreign, it is though incumbent on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ensure that we are better able to have Barbadian population understand why we do what we do is, or how it's important to us. And so therefore, our digital transformation exercise that we're going through, and in which the second phase is aimed at making us not just paperless and better information sharing, but also better communicating. So we have our website. The ministry has a website which we try our best to keep well updated. But what Senior Minister just said, the public diplomacy program, where we will engage more, not just talking about our achievements, but helping to drill down and explain why this is important. Our actions are important for the average Barbadian, is an exercise that we are very, very cognizant is one that we are a little bit on the back foot on. The Metaverse Embassy will help, but first it's also the public diplomacy program, which is not a separate thrust, it's integrated, but it's very much a focus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I rest at this point just to encourage that we share more. I was going to ask a more parochial question, particularly coming after the Honourable Member for the City, and that has to do, when he mentioned sister cities, and this would have had to do with twinning. In St. Peter, we believe that the ministry has been a little bit tardy in addressing those matters with us, but it would not be fair to ask since I've gone back to the ministry in very recent times. So I'm saying it publicly only to add a little bit of pressure from this perspective to say I expect responses not in the year that it took for the original response, but I am detecting some energy that I'm hoping that a wave that we can ride on. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And the pressure applied is noted, Honourable Member.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Peter. Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central.
Thank you, Chair, Minister and team. I want to first of all thank you and your predecessor for the work that the ministry has been doing thus far to ensure that the foreign affairs of this country, and for trade, of course, continues to occupy domestic, regional, and international space. As Minister of the Environment, my question obviously will come from that particular sphere. And I know that the Minister, it may not be a question, it may just be a comment to you, but I know as a local fellow you have the unreserved ability to add lucidity to my question and comment, however you put it. Your ministry have allowed us over the years to form bilateral relationships, sometimes multilateral, with agencies, government heads, countries, so that me as a minister and my ministry will be able to build out the environmental sphere, which is very important to us as a country. The environmental sphere for me is how mankind is able to interfuse with the world, our natural environment, our ecological environment. You have done tremendous work in allowing us and allowing the Prime Minister to be able to be that big voice on climate change and climate-related matters. It is through your ministry that we are able to position ourselves in the world as a leader in climate change. We've got the Bridgetown Initiative, as alluded to earlier in your opening remarks. There is also the Bridgetown Declaration, which got the acquiescence of all the ministers in 2022 of Latin America and the Caribbean. You have done tremendous work. So my comment question, however you put it, is saying that we, as a small country, a small underdeveloping share, who are exposed to the vagaries of climate change and other natural disasters, it is no secret that over the next couple of years, that we will be exposed to other existential threats. We've had in 2019, COVID-19 as we know it. And had not for your ministry and the work that you would have done in ensuring that outreach, bilateral or otherwise, we would not be able to survive either financially, socially, or whatever, from a health perspective, as it relates to the fight with climate change. Your ministry was integral as a partner in ensuring that this country got vaccines, financial and other
Honourable
assistance.
Minister, would you please get to your question? Thank you.
Question or comment? It's only one, so I ain't getting three, so I put in everything in one.
Proceed, Honourable Minister.
I coagulating today. All right. So what I want to ask from you, as we are on the cusp of other existential threats, whether it is from the threats from other zoonotic illnesses, the threats from ocean acidification on our oceans as we know it, the threats of long-term loss and damages, desertification, a whole series of things that may threaten our existence. Tell us about the work in your ministry and what you'll be doing to ensure that these new and future threats that we are faced with are not going to devastate us as a small island state, and that foreign affairs will be there as a fulcrum to ensure that we are able to militate, mitigate, and adapt to these new challenges. That is it in a nutshell for me. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to invite P.S. Rudder to take that question, and after her, invite Mr. Tyrone Brathwaite, Senior Foreign Service Officer for Human Rights and Multilateral Relations, to augment the...
Thank you, Senior Minister. And on behalf of the ministry, I'd like to very much thank Minister Adrian Ford for his kind words and commendation on the work that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has been able to do and continues to do in conjunction with the teams in his ministry to position Barbados internationally in the range of issues that he has mentioned, be it maritime delimitation, ocean governance, and the range of, to use your very apt term, existential threats caused by climate change. And what do? We go out there and we negotiate with our experts, pulled from, as I said, this ministry, ministry responsible for environment and other ministries, to ensure that the international treaties and the framework agreements which are going to dictate international policy on these areas are fit for our purpose, that they take into account our needs and they respond to our requirements to be able to continue to survive in this world. And in many instances, it's very much an issue of survival, be it with, for climate change, 1.2, the 1.5 degrees to stay alive, sea level rise, etc. And Senior Foreign Service Officer Tyrone Brathwaite, in addition to the roles that he fulfills, he's also our expert on maritime issues and guides from within the ministry our involvement in the environmental issues, which range from climate change into biodiversity, into ocean governance. And I trust that he's in place now in the well and can pick up the identification on how the ministry continues to work to protect and advance Barbados's interests in the international arena on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ford, for your question. Honorable ministers, thank you for the opportunity to be able to say a bit about what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been doing on the international front to advance Barbados's interests in various arenas and also on various issues. Minister Ford spoke about oncoming
Officer, you're required for Hansard and those viewing to give your name and your area of endeavor for the records. Thank you.
I shall so do. My name is Tyrone Brathwaite. I am the Senior Foreign Service Officer on the Human Rights and Multilateral Relations Desk of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Yes, sir. So to continue
your response.
Thank you. So to continue, Minister Ford, you spoke about oncoming existential threats. We know that the most critical and urgent one that we are currently facing is that which you mentioned, which is climate change. And your ministry, sir, has a very firm technical grip on that issue. Coming out of the last conference of states parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Minister, you will be aware that Barbados was able very successfully, along with other like-minded states, SIDS and others, to get commitment for the establishment of a loss and damage fund. This is something that we view that is critical in helping to address those impacts of climate change that are more or less irreversible. So we have not only been able to get that commitment for the fund to be established, but we have also managed to secure ourselves in the person of Mr. Avinash Prasad. We've managed to secure ourselves a berth on the transitional committee, which will be looking at matters relating to the operationalization of the loss and damage fund. So it is in very practical areas like that where the ministry has been able to position Barbados to lend leadership and guidance to in those matters that are really crucial to us being able to navigate the waters and being able to find a way out of the crisis that we are all facing globally. In terms of things that that are upcoming or that can be predicted to befall us, just a few days ago, the global community under the World Health Organization commenced negotiations on a pandemic agreement. We've all had the experience of COVID-19, something that we would not wish in our lifetimes or in the lifetimes of our children, grandchildren, and relatives to happen again. Those are areas in which the country, Barbados, a small island developing state like Barbados, where the value of multilateralism becomes more evident and more important. One country, one vote, one seat at the table, one voice, where we are now looking to be able to input into that process of the negotiation of the pandemic agreement, so that our rights as a small state is protected, that all of our rights are protected, and that we do not suffer the sorts of challenges that we did when we had to face the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of access to vaccines, having to rely on the goodwill of others in some cases in order to access vaccines, that there will be a regime in place that helps us, all of us as global citizens, to be able to access the care and the resources that we need to face upcoming challenges and upcoming existential challenges, as you quite rightfully framed them, Minister. So we still do have a role to play, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We continue to work to try to identify where those challenges might occur, where those threats might surface, and as far as possible, try to ensure that we always have a seat at the table. Not only do we have a seat, but that we take our place at our seat at the negotiating table, and that we guide those thoughts, guide those negotiations, and that we secure the best possible outcome for Barbados and for Barbadians. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2 p.m.